Governor, thanks so much for taking the time. Appreciate it. All right, you've watched the debate. What's your reaction?
You know, I think we still don't know who Kamala Harris is or what she plans to do. I didn't hear once a detailed description of what she was going to implement to make families' lives better, how she was going to make their groceries more affordable, gas prices drop, and allow them more opportunities into the future. So that's what's shocking to me, is these moderators never once pushed her, never once fact-checked her, even when she misspoke and when she lied. And it was pretty strange to watch that dynamic go down. I feel like the American people still at the end of this debate don't really know what Kamala Harris would do. And the next question should have been, if you're going to do that, why not do that today? Prove it. You have 2 months, you have 50 days here to prove to the American people you are who you say you are. Do it. You're in charge. And nobody challenged her on that. She should have been. Well,
when you say nobody challenged her on that, shouldn't that have been Donald Trump's job to challenge her on some of those things? And we were talking here about the fact that, coming into this, Donald Trump's goal was to tie Kamala Harris to what Republicans view as failures in this administration, right? And that would include immigration, it would include inflation, et cetera. But it did seem throughout that Donald Trump came back to the grievances again, rather than focusing more on the future and in part on the administration. Do you think it's a fair criticism?
He needed to make a case tonight and drive home the point of that he has a record. When he was in the White House, what he did to make families' lives better, how he passed tax reform that put more money in their pockets, what he did to secure the border, and how strong he was on the national and the world stage. He reminded the American people of all of that, and right now, Kamala Harris is in charge of this country, and their lives have dramatically declined. You've seen American families suffering now. Every three Americans today has their credit cards maxed out. I mean, can you even imagine? Not only are they relying on credit cards to pay their bills, they're maxed out and they have no other option left. That's how far it's declined in this country, and that's what we don't know. How is Kamala Harris going to fix that, and why isn't she doing it today when she actually is in charge?
You're making a compelling case. Do you think that Donald Trump made that compelling case tonight?
I think President Trump did a great job talking about his accomplishments and what he wants to do if given the opportunity to serve as President of the United States again, and he'll be aggressive. They talked a lot about foreign policy. They talked a lot about the border. I wish that both of these folks tonight would have talked about how our children are dying. Our 18 to 45-year-olds, the largest source of death in this country is fentanyl. And it's coming over that open border, and it's coming supplied by countries that hate us, such as China. This is a worldwide action plan to take down America. They're doing it by attacking us not only in our economy and stealing our IP and our currency, but now they're killing our children. And that really is what American families need to wake up and really think about when they watch a debate like this, is what does this country look like in 10, 15, 20 years if Kamala Harris is in charge? What does it look like if Donald Trump is in charge and they're making decisions that affect us? The reason I tell people I go out and speak for President Trump so often is because he let me do my job. As governor of South Dakota, he recognized that in America with our Constitution, that governors get to make decisions that impact their people and allow their people to use personal responsibility. That should have been something they talked about more tonight, because that's really what people are going to feel just a few months down the road.
Governor, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. You bet.
I think the biggest missed opportunity, it's interesting to hear the governor talk about what they should have discussed. I mean, fentanyl is really important, but why didn't they talk about it? Because there's a fundamental disconnect about what matters to the American people and what wins you an election, party versus party. And they're in the business of ignoring what the real common concerns are in this country. I mean, think about it. You're talking about Springfield, Ohio, right? There's so many issues that live in that municipality, right? There's Springfields all over this country, 60,000, lower in terms of recovery from the pandemic, higher with unemployment, higher with underemployment. All these issues you could talk about. You're talking about Haitians eating dogs. Why? Because that's how you win party versus party.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.